I'm Heather Dennis, and I'm in my studio this morning here at Cloud Hall in Rose Bay, and we're in the middle of a nice fluffy snowstorm. We've had a lot of snow overnight, and it's really, actually, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm actually enjoying that we're having a snowstorm. I'm not a big fan of snow, but anyway, it is brightening the landscape, let's put it that way. So this morning I wanted to just talk about something that I've become very passionate about, because everything that I experience in my body, I kind of like to lean into and experience and research and then figure out how to work with it in my own body so I can share that understanding with my clients. One of the really significant things that improves people's movements, and a lot more than just their movements, is to restore movement of the breath. I know everybody breathes, you aren't dying yet, but most people have a signature of how they breathe. So they have tension in certain areas and they don't breathe into other areas. So certain muscles start to work more than others. And it's just like the body. When we overuse something, it's not necessarily stronger, but when we don't use something that's meant to do a certain job, the body doesn't like that either. And the muscle in particularly that I'm talking about this morning is called the diaphragm muscle. And the diaphragm muscle is a big horizontal sheet of muscle that sits, sort of not right at the bottom of the rib cage, but almost the bottom of the rib cage. And it divides the rib cage from the abdominal contents. The diaphragm is very important for a lot of different reasons. One is that its action when you breathe in should be to descend and it's kind of like a parachute that just opens and widens as you breathe in, moving down and filling out into the torso, the mid and lower torso. And then as you exhale, it kind of comes together and lifts back up. And it is responsible for having a healthy core, or a core that works well and reflexively. And what that means is that the movement of the diaphragm creates pressure between the rib cage and the abdominals, so that it creates pressure against the abdominal wall, which is like an airbag around the spine. So if you don't have the diaphragm moving up and down nicely, or even out to the sides, out to the back, you won't have good reflexive stabilization around your spine. It just doesn't happen. So one of the things that, as a woman, over many years, we've all been sort of trained to hold in our guts, hold in our stomach, pull your belly button to spine, suck it up, pull your pelvic floor up. We've had all this kind of pulling in behavior, which actually is making our diaphragm less effective. So instead of our diaphragm being able to move down and pretension our abdominal wall and our pelvic floor, it is always held in a very static position. So that kind of pretensioning, which is, I describe it as, here's my favorite fabric, which is cotton lycra. Fabric, your pelvic floor and your abdominal wall, which actually wraps all the way around from here down to here, all the way around back, and it inserts into your spine in the back. So it's like a big, it's like a big wrap around you, and it's a very thin layer of muscle, but its strength comes from how it should pull evenly around the whole torso and give this horizontal support for the torso. So, a lot of us think that things are stronger when they're contracted. So if I take this piece of fabric and I bunch it up, that's kind of what the traditional fitness model has been, that we contract things, we make them shorter, we make them smaller, maybe. But fabric actually has, and your muscles actually have, a lot more tensile strength when they are kind of slightly elongated. And muscles contract much easier if they have a slight pretension or stretching before we ask them to contract. This is true in the abdominal wall the pelvic floor. So when we've been sort of holding our pelvic floor, holding our diaphragm up, holding our abdominal wall in all the time, we don't get that movement, that pretensioning of the tissue, so that it can then contract. And what happens is, because of that, we have a lot of digestive issues, we have a lot of chronic anxiety issues, there's a ton of them. Elimination issues, circulatory issues. I mean, the body is a system, if that's the way it works, but the diaphragm is one of the major muscles we can use to influence a lot of those systems. Now, the cool and not so cool thing about the diaphragm is that it doesn't have any sensory nerves. And because of that, we can't really feel if it's moving or not. So the exercises we need to do are more mind-body, somatic exercises that influence the areas around the diaphragm, the rib cage, the spine in the area of the diaphragm, being able to sense the movement of the breath through the body that will influence the diaphragm. So with all that information, I can assure you that you can learn skills. They're very easy to learn, they're easy to practice, and it's just a matter of practicing them. They're all there in your nervous system already. You learn them as a baby. We've just forgotten them through either stress or poor training. That you can learn how to breathe again, and you can learn to calm yourself down through your breath. You can learn how to create core support through enhancing your diaphragmatic breathing. If you're interested in learning how to do this, I offer this in an online and in-person course called Core Sense. Go to my website, heatherdennis.com, and you can see when the next course is. So I'd really love to see you, either through this medium, which is proving to be really great for getting good movement education out there, or in person, which I love meeting people in my studio and wherever I go to teach. So have a nice day. If you're somewhere where there's snow, go out and do a snow angel and enjoy this beautiful